Okay, our person that we're going to look at as a person of faith today is Joseph. And if you turn to Hebrews 11:22, it seems quite odd. Okay, just as long as I'm not driving you crazy. By faith, Joseph at the end of his life made mention of the exodus of the Israelites and gave instruction about his burial. And that's where we're going to focus. But before we start, are there specific prayer requests that we have for this group? That we need to think about? Rometta and Ronnie, of course, need to think about them. Vicky and Larry. And who'd you say? Vicky and Larry. At least Jerry and Diane. At least those. And there's.
I just talked to Jerry. He's just got a really bad.
Yeah.
Didn't want to be caught in front of him.
Okay. Still serious with their health conditions. There's the world situation. We need to think about that, and not so much exactly what's going on right now, but the ideas that drive some of what is going on, which may be more serious. Let us pray, and then we'll look at our Bible lesson. Dear God, we do come before you, and we confess that in many ways we are broken, and we need the bread of life. And we need faith. And not only do we need faith, but we need developing faith to deal with our life, our world, and other people in our life. Lord, we think about Ronnie and Rometta, Vicky, Larry, Jerry and Diane, and the world situation. And we ask you to guide us in our reactions, guide us through the trouble that's in our own life, and guide us when we sin. We ask for your blessing. In Jesus' name, amen. Do you find that the starting point in Hebrews 11:22 for Joseph is odd? Now, do you find it as odd? And if so, why?
I can see how it connects to his faith, because he's thinking about the future.
The future, okay. Yeah. And that's, yes, Bruce?
To me, it's kind of odd that there's so much emphasis on his burial,
Yeah.
which I knew how soldiers of Christ look forward to getting back from where they were, and that's kind of odd to me.
Yeah.
That he wanted to be buried a certain place.
Right. Right. So when we think about Joseph, really starting with chapter 37 of the book of Genesis and going to the end of it, Joseph is in that. Actually, there are two brothers that are in that: Joseph and Judah. Now, you may not think that 38th chapter means much, and you kind of, as you're reading the story, you're kind of thinking, that's an interruption. But that's a big part of Judah's development in the same time that Joseph is being developed. So that's why it's in there. And you see the effects of that chapter when Benjamin is caught with the cup, and Judah is making the plea, take me and not him. Does that make sense? So let's talk about Joseph. Our book uses a word that kind of threw me, transparency. That don't quite mean what, to me, what it did there. Maybe a better word would be integrity, but that also has its problems. But Joseph is a man of developing faith. Let's look at it that way. Joseph is a man of developing faith. If we go back to Genesis chapter 30, verse 22, we can just say he's born into a messed up family. The family of Abraham was chosen to lead us back to, can I say this? Eden? Can I say that? That family was chosen to lead us back to Eden, back to that relationship with God and man, where God and man walked together. But the family messed up. Joseph, let's start with Abraham. Roger talked about him last week. But he had this tendency to lie, among other things. You come to his son Isaac, and he's overshadowed by his father and his son, Jacob. He's kind of complacent in many ways, but he likes to lie too. And then, of course, my favorite, not really, but Jacob. He's a real mess. He's a trickster. He's a liar. He's a schemer. If he thinks anything's going to benefit him, and you're in the way, watch out. And, until he meets his uncle Laban. comes up against his own match, and then his sons are in on a big deception on him. And I'm not really sure that he really ever knows until they come back and say, Joseph's there. So Joseph is born into a messed up family. But that's kind of true of all of us. There's always some incident in the families that, although they're good families, may be considered great families, there's situations that are a little troubling sometimes. But maybe not quite as bad as these. So Joseph is born in Genesis 30, verse 22. He is the son of Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel. He is the 11th son. Leah has the most. Then the two substitute wives have 4. And then Rachel has Joseph at this point. Now, think about in Genesis 33, 1 and 2. Does this add to the conflict in the family? In Genesis 33, verses 1 and 2, the two substitute wives, the handmaidens' wives, and their children are set out first. Then Leah and her children. And then at the back, Rachel and Joseph. Does this add to the conflict that you see in the other part of the chapter with the brothers?
Jealousy.
Yeah. Does this say, oh, Dad considers us less important than these? Now, we don't really know this, but presume that Reuben is about 14 years older than Joseph. So it's possible. It's possible. But just assume that for a moment. So he's already a bit older. And so he can feel the resentment and jealousy. And then Simeon and Levi, they're old enough to catch on to it too. Okay. But now come to the chapter in Rachel dies after Benjamin is born in chapter 35, 16 through 21. Now come to chapter 37 of Genesis. Jacob's kind of dismissed a little bit in the second verse. And then it deals with descendants of Jacob. Specifically, the story is going to revolve around 2 of them, Joseph and Judah. But the others get involved too. So we're first told that Joseph is 17 years old. He is the assistant shepherd to Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Well, he brought a bad report to his father about how they were handling the sheep. Now, was he supposed to bring this bad report? Possibly. Possibly, probably. That he was just doing what was supposed to be done. But the problem, main problem, comes in the next verse or so. Jacob loved Joseph more than his other sons. And he demonstrated this by a special robe or garment. Now, whichever version of the Bible you read makes it clear that this is a special garment. If we're reading the Old King James, it's a multicolored garment. If you're reading some of the others, it's a garment with sleeves. Yeah. And what this probably implies, at least to the brothers, and I think to Jacob also, this is going to be the heir. This is going to be the heir. And it also probably was not a garment for work. It was not a garment for work. Think of the brothers as shepherds, taking care of sheep. You got this brat, 17 years old, tattletale, overseer. This is how his brothers see him. He's 17. Then, added to this, is the dreams. Notice that 2 dreams appear throughout this story. Joseph has 2 dreams. There are 2 dreams in the prison, the cupbearer and the baker. And Pharaoh has 2 dreams. It kind of ties the story together at various points. Remember the 2 dreams. So he has these 2 dreams. The first one, sheaves of grain. He has one. His 11 brothers have one. But the 11 brothers' sheaves bow down before Joseph. Then he has this other dream. Of course, the brothers are furious because he didn't have sense enough not to tell them. You know, he's 17. And he already feels on the outside of the brothers, and he's special to his father, and he knows that. So, and then he has another dream. And this kind of concerns Jacob when he tells him. Because it says, not only are my brothers going to bow down before me, but you and whoever his mother is at this point, it's not Rachel because she's dead. And it presumably Leah. That troubles Jacob to a bit, but he is of the understanding, let's not dismiss it too much, because God acts in ways that, can I say, strange sometimes? Let's not dismiss it. So, first crisis. Jacob's hated. Not Jacob, Joseph. Joseph's hated by his brothers. His brothers are jealous. Jacob is clueless, or he appears to be clueless. So he sends the 17-year-old to Shechem, which is about 50 miles from Hebron, where he is currently located, to find out what's going on with his brothers and the sheep.
He's not that dumb if he sends him out there. I mean, he's...
I think he's kind of clueless because he doesn't realize, or he's either clueless or complacent. Jacob, because he doesn't recognize the conflict that Joseph has with the brothers.
Yeah.
And so he sends him on a 50-mile journey to Shechem. Shechem's a place that should kind of trouble you in your head with the Joseph stories. So he sends him to Shechem to find out about the brothers, but the brothers are not there. So he goes on to Dothan, which is another 15 to 20 miles away. Of course, he's wearing that coat. And the brothers see him coming. We don't know which one suggests the idea of killing him, but we may have a clue as to when he sends them back, who he keeps. And that is pretty much the idea that's developed in the Testament of the 12 patriarchs. It is Simeon who decides that he's going to kill him. That's Simeon's idea. Now, let me say again, the Bible doesn't specifically tell us that. Okay? So, they strip off that robe. That robe. That infuriating robe. Let's kill this dreamer. Now, Reuben, who's got his own problems with Jacob because he slept with one of Jacob's wives, says, no, let's not kill him. Let's just throw him into the pit. Now, there's a certain logic to that. You're not really killing him. You're just arranging for his death. And so, therefore, you don't have blood on your hands. Okay? Yeah. You're not really responsible for his death. You just threw him in the pit where he starved to death or he died of thirst. So maybe the brothers, yeah, let's not really get our hands bloody with this. But Reuben had an ulterior motive. He was going to rescue Joseph. And perhaps he had in mind, I'll mend some fences with Dad. Perhaps he had that in mind. Okay, so they go eat lunch. For whatever reason, Reuben is not there. Most likely, maybe it's his time to watch the sheep while the others eat their lunch. Judah sees the Ishmaelite traders, and this section of it presents a rabbit's path. Because is it Ishmaelite traders or is it Midianite traders? Are the terms used interchangeably? Because of the close association of the two groups of people? Or is there another situation where the Ishmaelite traders are what Judah sees, but there's a group of Midianites that come along and they actually somehow hear Joseph in the pit and they drag him out and sell him to the Ishmaelites? Most seem to buy the first idea that the two names are used interchangeably. So they sell him for 20 pieces of silver. Again, if you look at the testament of the 12 patriarchs, the section that Zebulun talks about, they take the 20 pieces of silver, or at least some of them do. Simeon, Dan, and 2 or 3 of the others, and they buy shoes with them for their themselves and their families. Again, that is not in the Bible, but that's the testament of the 12 patriarchs. It was written in the 2nd century BC. But it seems to influence much of what Stephen says about this story in Acts 7. Okay? But anyway, they use some logic of why they bought shoes with it instead of other stuff. And the logic kind of ran something like this. We can't really use it to buy food with because it was the cost of our brother's blood, and we sold our brother, but we can walk on him. Kind of what they wanted to do, you know. Now, the goat. The goat. Jacob had years earlier, with the help of his mother, Rebekah, deceived Isaac with a goat. Jacob gets deceived with the blood of a goat in this story. Don't you find those connections interesting? So we've got Joseph in the Ishmaelites' hands. He's gone to Egypt, where he's bought by Potiphar, who is the captain of the guard. And probably what this means is that he is the administrator of Pharaoh's prison and the chief executioner. So, examples of Joseph's faith. We don't really see much faith as that 17-year-old boy in Canaan, right? We just know about the dreams. The dreams can be considered somewhat of faith. Somewhat. But Joseph's faith develops in Egypt. We see that he is a skilled administrator, and maybe Jacob saw that in the 17-year-old Joseph. And that's why he sent him out to, hey, go look at your brothers and see what they're doing. He's a skilled administrator in the household of Potiphar. He, he takes over everything, practically, in Potiphar's household. Potiphar's wife becomes interested in him, and 17-year-old, the mistress of the house. I'm a slave. I could benefit from this relationship. Right?
17, I mean, what were we thinking at 17?
Yeah.
How can I better?
Yeah. He could benefit from this relationship, right? Right? Couldn't we think that? He could get some extra favors, maybe some extra money, some extra privileges. Maybe she could put in a good word for him with Potiphar, and he might no longer be a slave. But notice chapter 39, verse 9. 39, verse 9. And I can't see it. Starting with verse 8. But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, with me here, my master has no concern about anything in the house. And he has put everything that he has in my hands. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except yourself, because you are his wife." His expression of faith: how then could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?
Because he trusted.
Yes, he's trusting in God. Between Canaan and Egypt, and being a slave in Potiphar's house, he is developing faith. He's developing integrity. He, as our book, Transparency, they see God through Joseph. In Potiphar's house, Potiphar is being blessed because Joseph is there. Again, Joseph is a skilled administrator. So, this doesn't work out very well for Joseph from our point of view. He refused the advance. And eventually, this went on for a while. This wasn't a one-time and done deal. This was something that went on for a while. He even developed the scheme of not working when she was there, of avoiding her. And then she trapped him one day. And he left his coat behind. This is not the coat that This is a slave coat or a slave garment. He left it behind. Again, his coat gets him in trouble. Connections in the story. His coat gets him in trouble. And I wonder, and this is Greg Childers stuff, I wonder if Potiphar actually believed his wife so much. You know why? Why didn't he just kill him? He was a slave after all. So he's thrown into prison. And again, this prison is probably under Potiphar's oversight. And in prison, he finds himself being blessed by God again, put into oversight position of the other prisoners. There are two special prisoners that arrive. And again, these prisoners have dreams. The cupbearer and the baker. Baker's is good. I know. The cupbearer's is good. The baker's is not so good. Actually, it's horrible for the baker. Chief cupbearer is going to be restored in 3 days. The baker's going to die in 3 days. A very painful death. But in 40 verse 8, Joseph's faith is expressed again. They said to him, "We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." And Joseph said, "Do not interpretations belong to God?" Tell me. Joseph has skills at interpreting dreams. He's forgotten for 2 years after the events of the baker and the cupbearer. Pharaoh has 2 dreams. 2 years later. 2 years later. In chapter 41, verse 16, Joseph is brought to explain the dreams to Pharaoh. Now, he could have said, "I will tell you the dreams," but he says again that God will reveal the dream. In verse 16, he says, "It is not I, God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." After he interprets the dreams as meaning what they mean, 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine, he suggests appoint an administrator to collect the grain and store it for that time of famine. So in chapter 42, chapter 41:36 tells us he's 30 years old. So in chapter 42, he meets the brothers for the first time. So he will be at least 37 years old at this point. And the brothers say, "We are honest men." Honest men. And Joseph is going, Honest men? Really? Let's just see how honest you are. You're spies. He puts them in prison. All of them. And then you can go home, but I'm going to keep one of you. He first came up with the idea, okay, we'll keep 10 of you, and one of you can go home. But you're bringing Benjamin back. Chapter 45. Chapter 45 is the second visit. And he reveals himself to them. Now, this is after he's pulled all the stuff with Benjamin, put the silver cup in Benjamin's bag, sent him after him, and said, "No, I've got him." And Judah pleads for his life. So if we look in chapter 45, verses 5 through 9, Joseph's faith. He says, "Now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." And he goes on to explain that the famine's going to last another 5 years. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. So, go get Jacob, the rest of the family, bring them to Egypt. Now, we got to connect this back to Genesis 15. Story of Abraham. How did they know this connection? The stories were told in the family. Even as messed up as that family was, they told the stories. Father Abraham, Sarah. They told the stories of Noah. They told the story of Enoch. They told the story of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. Again, chapter 48, verse 9. An expression of Joseph's faith. This is in the naming of his sons. What he says to his father. "They are my sons whom God has given me here." And he said, "Bring them here to me, please." He saw God as using the brothers' treachery as to save the family. And then in Genesis 50, 24 through 26, we have this part of the story that's in Hebrews 11:22, where he says, "I'm dying. Don't bury me here. Take my bones. Take my bones back to Canaan." Now, he doesn't tell them to take his bones back to Canaan now, at the point of his death, but when the Exodus comes. And we see in Exodus 13, verse 19, that Moses takes the bones of Joseph, with them when they leave. Joshua 24, verse 32, the bones are buried at Shechem. Kind of interesting. Shechem was the stopping point before you got to Dothan. before he went into slavery. Shechem is the point where the family could have been destroyed because of Simeon and Levi. Acts 17, 9 through 16, Stephen tells the story of Joseph. Now, what this point of Hebrews 11:22 is emphasizing is connecting this with the end of that chapter of Hebrews 11. The goal is in the future. It's in the resurrection. Taking Joseph's bones back to Canaan was future to the people of Israel. The resurrection, the rewards of faithful living are future. Sorry, that's all I've got.